And I would really like to welcome Fiona, our ambassador, and she will tell you a little bit about herself.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for attending. My name's Fiona Wierik. My husband and I are Michael, ambassadors for the Foster Care Association in Victoria. It's a role that we took on about 18 months ago, and we've had some opportunities to assist the FCAV with resources and effecting change across the sector in Victoria. We started caring in 2007 with a group called Connections in an adolescent care program, which unfortunately, due to reforms, lost its funding, and we were moved over to Wesley, which is now known as Uniting. And after some years with them, we chose to move over to Life Without Barriers and have been with them ever since. In our time, we've done always one long-term placement, and then we do emergency and respite on top of that. And through our home in the last 17 to 18 years, we've had around 80 children, and we've loved every minute of it.
Thank you. And I should have done this at the very beginning, but I would like to begin with the acknowledgement to country and to pay my respect and acknowledge that we are meeting today on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respect to their elders past and present. I recognise the continuing connection to their land, water and community. I would also like to acknowledge the present Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people with us and acknowledge their strength and resilience. So thank you all. So I will just get on to the next part. So thank you, Fiona, for joining us. So we began thinking about what might help carers, particularly as they are starting to foster. And I think Fiona came up with the idea of what would we wished we had known. It's a bit of a mouthful, that one, when we first began fostering, but know now. And so this started us off doing a little bit of research and gathering a few ideas. As you know, that fostering can be one of the hardest but most rewarding roles you can take on. And many new foster carers do not know the system. It can be quite challenging at times, nor understand that they too have rights and should be provided with support and information, and especially when a new child is potentially coming into your home. Fiona, would you be asking, what would you be asking for when the agency rings you with a potential placement?
I think firstly, when you get the call, if you're busy or at work, just make some space to be able to focus on what they're asking you. I always like to have a little notepad with me. When I get that initial phone call, I always ask, may I have a copy of the referral emailed, and about 20 minutes to have a look over it and discuss it with my husband. And so in the process of reviewing the referral, I look at the child's age, where they're coming from, their history of trauma, if they're at school or daycare, and how far that is from where I am. You need to think about, will I need assistance with transport for this child on the days that I work, or is that child eligible for a letter from the department that allows their childcare to be covered? And so doing all these little things at the beginning and asking at the beginning of the placement just allows you to access those resources quickly rather than having to follow up and try and get those things on board later. I think it's important to think about the setup of your home. Will this child fit in with any other children that I currently have? Particularly when children come from a place of trauma. Some children struggle with older children coming into a placement, and you've got to think about the dynamics and also how your house is set up. For example, if you're taking on a baby, you might need to ask for a car seat or a pram in the short term if you don't have for one. Two, I like to ask about contact with biological family, how often this is, how that's coordinated, whether it's something that I need to partake in or whether transport is provided. And also to think about whether that child has a disability. Now, when you take this call, for example, if I get a baby with cerebral palsy that I know that I can carry around for the next few months, let's say I'm taking on a long-term placement, what are the plans in the future for that child? It may be some time before a care team meeting or a case plan meeting, and just to think about what resources that you can ask for in the beginning. Two, if they're linked in with a paediatrician, and if they do come on board and you find that there is something serious going on, would the department help to cover the cost of a paediatrician appointment? So there's lots of things to consider. I tend to jot down a few notes before I call them back. And don't say yes if you don't think it's going to fit. We all like to say, yes, we'll take everybody. But the reality is that if you're not prepared, the placement's not going to work out. And so then I make that call back. I'm very lucky. I ring my husband goes, yep, whatever, whatever you think. And yeah, make that call back to the worker and just say, great, I'm happy to take on this young person. I'd love a car seat. Or they might say, can you take a sibling group? And you're like, yes, if you give me some bunk beds, you know, and sort of ask about those resources initially. And I think too, just little things like ask for the Medicare card number, because I guarantee within that first week you'll be going to the GP, and they can give you the number over the phone or in the referral. You don't actually have to have that card. And at that point to ask for assistance with transport. So if you work 1 day a week and you can't get them to school, ask if they can assist. And look, they may come back and say, we can't assist and we can't support you A, B, and C. Well, then that's not the placement for you. So if you agree to take on the placement and everything's working out and the child comes to your home, I think it's really important within the first 2 to 3 days of a child arriving to have a meeting with the case manager, because a week is often too long. And the first 2 to 3 days, you find out what the complexities are and what supports you need. And it's really a time for you to raise any concerns. And so anything too that you may foresee in the future that they will need, that you can raise at that point. So during that time, you also have to find out what authority you have as a carer. Can you cut their hair? Because there's some situations where biological family rather do that. What if the child needs to go to hospital? What if the child, you get a call from the school and they're asking to see an adult? Can you go in as the child's representative, or does the case manager have to come? Talk about to when the first care plan meeting's being held and who that will be with and who will be involved in that. And so during these first few days, it's often a honeymoon period and you don't truly see what's going on or the trauma the children have been through. And so we often find that that first, 48 to 72 hours tends to go really well. And so it's really important to then set up a care team meeting relatively soon after the placement has started. So I wouldn't necessarily leave it a couple of months. I would say 3 to 4 weeks after the placement has commenced, you'd organise a care team meeting. And it's really important as a carer that you're present. But also you may have a representative from a department as well as your caseworker. And in some situations, biological family may attend if it's appropriate. And so during this care team meeting, it really sets, and we'll go into that a little bit more detail, but to have those in place and that plan in place when you initially take on a placement is really important.
Great, thank you. I was also just reminded that according to the Victorian Carers Handbook, it clearly identifies that carers should be invited to attend care team meetings and case planning meetings. Have you been invited, or is it something that you've had to sort of generate yourself?
So care team meetings, I've always been actively involved, and there's a difference between a care team meeting and a case plan meeting.
Yeah.
So a care team meeting you have regularly once a month, generally with your case manager. You may have a representative from the school, or if there's allied health involved. A case plan meeting is really, as it says, is a long-term plan for that child and what we're going to do over the next 12 months. So it may be a 12-month review, or it could be prior to a court hearing. Now, carers aren't always invited to those, unfortunately. You need to advocate to attend. And it's really important that carers do that because we spend the most time with the child.
Yeah.
And so we understand the complexities of the child. We understand how the child reacts in certain situations. And we're able to also identify and advocate for the child in that next 12-month period. And so we're not always invited. So speak to your case manager and try and get on board. And I think prior to those meetings, the case plans meetings, just think about what that child might need. So, for example, for me, I had a child that I questioned whether or not was neurodivergent. And so I went to my GP and said, this child is obviously struggling in school. Is there any way you could make a written recommendation that they see a paediatrician? And so when you come to that case plan meeting, you've got a document from a health professional that says this child needs a review. Now, in that situation, when a medical practitioner is making a recommendation, it's hard for the department to say, no, sorry, we can't do that. And it gives you the grounds to say it would be great if you could fund that first one. If there is neurodiversity present and they need an assessment, can we plan for the department to also pay for that assessment? I think that there's times where foster children get pushed into mainstream care. And just an example, would have been 6 years ago, I had a young boy in my care who got put on a waiting list to see a paediatrician in the public sector, and every 6 months I still get a letter, and he left my care 6 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So I think that some children do get lost in the system. But if you have that sort of that empowered letter to say, hey, a healthcare professional wants this dealt with quickly, it just gives you more grounds to push and advocate for the child. I think it's also a good opportunity to advocate for how the contact with biological family would best work for children. And it's not necessarily that we have any control over those decisions. And we often find that they come back from contact with biological family very dysregulated. They may struggle for a few days to settle back into their normal routine. And for us, we've definitely had children where there's been an extended period of contact, the children come back and it's a detriment that affects their schooling, it affects their ability to cope, and sometimes it's been a week before we've seen behaviours settle. And so one of the things we've done is we've requested to shorten the period of contact. And so let's say the period of contact is for a whole day or overnight, maybe requesting, well, could we do 2 hours in a park every Friday night? So they're still having regular contact, but it's a shorter period of time. And so they're still getting that ability to develop relationships with their family, etc. Sometimes contact is regulated in the department and their visits that are supervised, and that can be out of your control. But where there's
that'll
an
be court
opportunity,
ordered, wouldn't it?
yeah, and court ordered,
Yeah.
But sometimes there's a little bit of flexibility, and you just want to make sure that you're doing everything you can to help them. At the end of the day, you may not be able to change it, but these are the meetings to ask those things and to raise those issues. Also, I think it's a good idea to talk about court orders and what their plans are long term, just to help you understand what the process is so you can manage the child's expectations. I think, speaking to the child about the plan moving forward, relative to age, of course, in how much depth you get into that, but having a chat with them about this is the process and the plan, and so that their expectations are managed. And it's a really great place to raise any concerns. Like, for example, you might have a child who has very aggressive behaviour and is sent home early from school frequently. How can we put supports in place to assist that child long term? And I'm going back to the example, just little things like if you've got an adolescent child that you're caring for and you want them to have some independence, can you request that the department funds an annual bus pass? Or again, going back to disability, if you have a young person and you foresee in the next 12 to 18 months, yes, they will need to move to a wheelchair from a pram. How do we get funding from that? Can we get that ball rolling? Rather than crisis intervention when all of a sudden you need these things, put it in the plan for the next 12 months to 5 years, whatever you may need, or whatever the length of the order is. And so, again, just coming back, the carers really know the children the best. It's your time to be an advocate and be involved in that decision-making process. At the end of the day, carers don't have any rights when it comes to final decisions. That's the reality, and we understand that. But just having that opportunity to voice your concerns, be heard, and try and advocate is really important.
That's great. What's been, and I know you've mentioned a few things that you've been able to obtain, but what would have been the best, or what is the best support that you've obtained so far in your fostering career?
My first thing is to set the placement up for success, right? And I know this sounds silly, but I actually have a template email that I send out to, because every child comes with a different case manager. And the email says, hey, I'm Fiona. I work Monday, Wednesday, Friday. This is my best time for care team meetings. This is part of their team. This is when contact is organised if the child's been in long-term care with you before, or if it's a new child, just setting out that, you may need support around these particular times, and your availability if they need to catch up with you. And so setting it up for success and just putting it out there when you're free for catch-ups, and your best mode of communication is really important. There's no point, like, I'm a nurse, I can't take calls when I'm in the treatment room with the patient. So, it's important that they know if they need to catch up with me, the avenue to get in contact with me in emergency, etc. So I think that that's important first. But
That's a good
secondly, I think you need to build a really good relationship with your case manager, because having that strong relationship and that trust between you and being both on the same page makes the process a lot smoother. And I think that there's a great opportunity there to become a really fantastic team and work together to meeting that child's needs. Also, I think that it's important as a carer to look at the supports around you and who has the capacity to support you. And I say this with love, but a lot of family aren't exposed to the trauma that you're prepared for. We're told that the children may act out. We're told that they may have dysregulated behaviours. Your family hasn't. And so, in some degree, it can be quite shocking for them. And they might find it hard to interact. So, you have to look at other avenues for support. And I think the best thing that you can do is meeting with other carers, getting to know other carers, someone who understands your position, that, you can have those chats with, oh, I had a really hard weekend. Have you experienced this before? And there's lots of ways that you can do that. I know our agency has regular catch-ups, but there are things that are run through the Foster Care Association. There are also some agencies that do a buddy system, where when you come on as a new carer, you're buddied with an experienced carer as just a point of contact. And also there are programs like the Mockingbird Family, which I won't get into now, but that is a fantastic way of, establishing a network. I think it's great to also utilise respite. I know for us, being respite carers, we've sort of become surrogate aunt and uncles for young children, and it's nice. And then we've developed a relationship with the carer, and that's been a great support for both of us. There's also community resources that you can access if you really need extra support, things like Carer Gateway or carer groups locally that you can be a part of. But also, if you're in a crisis, it's important to know that most agencies provide external counselling services, and you can get 6 funded sessions through them for free if you're struggling. Like, for example, we had a baby until he was 3. We helped him transition back to biological family. and it was hard, and we did need that extra support, and it was nice to use those services to get us through. Also to the Foster Care Association carer support team that you can always call for advice, but also using your local health professionals. Your GP can give you a mental health care plan if you need it.
And the other thing I was thinking too is we have the Carer Assistance Program, which is the counselling. It's a short-term intervention, but the counsellors really understand the system. So you can have the counselling with them and it's free. So.
Yeah.
Sorry, did I interrupt?
No.
So I was just thinking too, preparing for placements, and you talked about thinking about the furniture and things that you might need. Was there anything else? And also preparing to end the placement, like, obviously that little 3-year-old, that would have been a very sad time, but what are the things that you might do to help, prepare for them to come, but also to leave?
Yeah. So we have a room set up with some bunk beds, etc. And I actually have some boxes with age appropriate toys which go into the shelf there. So I know if I'm getting a 2-year-old that I'm going to bring out 2-year-old relevant toys and set them up. I put a little towel on their bed with maybe like a craft activity or a colouring book. Whereas if it's a teen, I might get like a little $25 voucher for an online game or a movie or something like that. And just so that there's something nice to greet them. And I think in that space, it's important to make it cozy and warm. So I'll have a throw blanket. I know this sounds crazy, but I put the yellow white bulbs in the light so that you get like a, very calm feeling. And I also like, particularly with the little kids, to have one of those little tents in the corner that they can just go in and hide and play. So really a sanctuary for them is what's really important. I also find that a lot of children will come to you with rashes. They may have sores. You may find that they have head lice. So I have a little box in my bathroom cupboard with just some lice treatment, creams, moisturizers, etc. And I also have a little bucket of different size underwear, nappies, and wipes as well. So when they come into your home, it's important to know that they often don't come with much. And sometimes they'll turn up with one bag, and other times they've turned up in a nappy and a singlet. But there are fantastic services out there that do help you when children arrive with no clothes, toiletries, etc. So, for example, we often get things from Backpack for Vic Kids, which is a fantastic non-for-profit organisation that supplies these amazing backpacks that will have a set of pajamas in there. I remember I had this little boy come who was obsessed with the Tigers, the AFL team. And so he had the Tigers pajamas in there. He had a pair of shorts, a t-shirt. He had some age appropriate toys, some toiletries. And I tell you what, it can be a godsend, because sometimes these children arrive at 3 o'clock in the morning and you don't have always an opportunity to go out and buy clothes, etc. So we're really lucky to have access to that. I know there are other services out there that also provide similar supports, but they've really been amazing for us. So, thank you to them. I guess when we're ending a placement, it can be really challenging time for kids, and we find they often act out. Of course, they don't have the ability to cope with the change and transition, and the best reunification plan won't change the fact that you'll both grieve each other. And so, depending on that child, helps me to decide to what extent I will do to support them in that. Now, some kids may be really happy, an adolescent who's going home back to biological dad or whatever, and they're really excited, then I'll celebrate that with them. And so I might do a photo book of us and what we've done on our adventures. And I might invite the family over and we'll have a little party. But if it's a young child, they're going to miss you. Throwing a big party is not really appropriate. So I might have like a quiet family dinner or say to them, what's your favourite thing you like to do with us? Yeah, let's do that just, the night
Mm.
before you go and have something to look forward to. Some of the kids, I love scrapbooking, so I'll make a little scrapbook and I'll put in like the movie tickets of the movies that we went to or Gunby Park and that sort of thing. So, sometimes a small farewell is more appropriate. And it can be really challenging. Part of us wants to keep in contact, and I know that we've built good relationships with biological families, and we want to stay involved, but sometimes the children also need that time to then develop attachment to the biological family. So getting too involved during that transition process can be a hindrance as well. So yeah, you just have to assess each case as it comes up.
And I know for some, as the full-time carer, sometimes you might remain as the respite carer, even though
Yeah,
they've gone home to family.
yeah,
And so it just supports the family and maintains that connection. But, other times you might never hear from them again. So
yeah.
it varies, I know. And I know you talked a little bit about the honeymoon period. And I was just thinking when a child first comes into placement, it can be that first few weeks that there's that real peaceful time. And then often we know that that's the child checking you out, sort of sussing things out and seeing how you're going to manage. And then they might test you. So, and obviously you've had that experience. Can you tell us a little bit more on how you manage that?
When we first started, we didn't know anything about the honeymoon period, and it was a baptism of fire. I tell you, some of them can be very, very confronting and challenging. And so, kids, when they come into your home, they want you to like them. They want you, to give them what they want, and they will really play up to being a good child. But often, these kids from traumatic backgrounds can only sustain that for so long. And we've seen a difference, like some kids it's been a few weeks and other children it's been 3 months. And we start to see that trauma behaviour present and the breakdowns in abilities to cope. And becoming dysregulated. Sometimes during this period, they might be aggressive or violent, they might break property. And we have had children who have started self harming. I think during this period, when you see this shift, make sure that you identify what you need as soon as possible. Does this child need some counselling? Do you need some training and education to support this
Mm.
child through this transition? And it's hard to sustain that fairy tale for them at the beginning. So you will see it shift. And some children it's quite little, but most of the children you really see that trauma related behaviour present.
Mm. And I think somebody's asked, how do you feel about saying yes to providing respite? Does that hinder new placements with you?
It doesn't with us because we've got the capacity and the 2 bedrooms free in our house. So we
Mm.
have 1 bedroom allocated for long-term placements, and our other bedroom is set up for respite. And so, yeah, we definitely do a bit of both. And, sometimes we don't have a placement, we just do a bit of respite and emergency for a little while. And then other times we'll have a long term placement and then the second bedroom. So it hasn't affected our intake of children or the calls that we get. Um, Definitely for us, it's been quite an easy process. Yeah.
Mm. Oh, great. The other area, we also know that, it's very likely that most foster carers will experience a SIMS allegation at some point in their fostering career. And I wondered what you might do to ensure that you protect yourself as much as possible from allegations. What are some of the things that you kind of put in place?
Yeah. You have to document and report everything,
Mm.
every little incident. For example, a young person, a carer I knew, went to step out in front of the car and the carers grabbed the backpack and pulled the child back and it's choked them. And so they've gone to school and said, my carer choked me. and then that's become an allegation. And so if there's anything that happens, I just report it back to my case manager, whether it's in a phone call, an email. If they get hit in the head by a ball at school, when you pick them up, take a photo of the bruise, send it through. Make sure you report and document everything, because it can be something that is very, very small, that can be a way in which a child misinterprets, or a way in which they can sabotage the placement to get back to mum and dad.
Yeah.
And so the other thing I encourage you to do is, I know our agency has a document where we go to a GP and the GP assesses them and said, this is what they found, this is the treatment, and if they need follow-up. And definitely with a head injury, within the first, sort of 6 to 12 hours, to get them to see a doctor. Or if they've fallen over in the playground and they've got bruises up their arm, and get them to document. Please don't be complacent. To a certain degree, it's not if this happens, it's when. We've been carers for 17 years and it's happened twice to us. It's been unsubstantiated, and it is very, very stressful. And it can be traumatic for the children. The children can be removed from the placement, and you do, to a certain extent, get interrogated, but rightly so, because they need to protect the children. So just keep everyone in the loop, document everything, and look after yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For sure, because it is and at the moment it seems to be taking quite a long time for them to be processed. So it's a difficult period. And reach out, we're definitely available to help and through that process. The other, you talked a little bit too about the birth family and having a good relationship with them. And my understanding is that that really helps children in care, and it also sets up a more collaborative approach with the family long term. I worked with one family years ago where the aunt initially had the care of the boys and could not continue. So with support from the carers, she attended some of the care teams, and then over time they invited her to their home. And to this day, they're still very connected and she's very much part of their life. So I think that, the boys chose not to sort of have a great deal with mum, but definitely with the aunt, and that's been really great. So, I just thought that was something you could tell us maybe a little bit more about what you do.
so important. Really, it can make a big difference. But in saying that, there are some situations where it's not appropriate. If parents are really angry about their kids being in care, sometimes it's very challenging then. And you have to give them the time to grieve and process and deal with that. So, even though you want to do the right thing, there will be times where you think this is not working, but that's okay. But if you do have an opportunity, it can be a wonderful experience. I tend to have a space for the children in the room, whether it be a cork board or one of those mats that you put photos into, or a little photo book or an empty photo frame where they can put photos up with their family. And in return, I've had biological family where I've sent photos of when they've got a certificate at school, invited them to come to school plays, had them be, a part of their cheer squad at the basketball. We used to have a sibling group that we cared for with another foster carer, and at the birthdays, the carer and the two sibling groups would come together and would invite the parents. And so the parents would sit up one end of the table with the boys and would sort of be down the other. And, over time, we did develop a really lovely relationship. And I think that that allows the children to see it's okay to be in foster care. It is different, but we're still a big family. The carers are my family, my parents are my family. And I think that that is very positive, because when they become young adults, it allows them to have had a positive relationship with their parents, but they can still have their foster parents there in the background as support and extended family. We currently have a young person where every couple of months we have a dinner out with his siblings and grandparents, which is really nice. And we have a little chat group and keep very connected where we send photos, etc. So I think it is really important. It's very important for the child and their emotional development while they're on this journey.
And it doesn't, like, there are some families where, as we've talked about, there might be violence or there's issues. It doesn't have to be something that you jump straight into, but build up that contact over time. And it might be at access, or you get to meet them and build up. So you don't have to jump right in. That's what I just wanted to say. So
and I think every little bit counts, Deb, whether that, if they're having supervised contact, to send a photo of, them at school with a certificate, or just slowly start that relationship.
And even, like, I know of some carers that have had like a communication book with the parents, and just sort of put in maybe what they've done over the weekend or any milestones the child might have reached, things like that, and just let mum and dad know. So, and that's helped to build up the relationship over time, which is good. So the other area is self-care and compassion are vital for foster carers to be able to survive the system and not burn out. What do you do for your own self-care?
It's so funny because sometimes you forget about yourself. You do. You get caught up in all the to-do lists and meetings and what's going on with the kids. But my suggestion is to schedule time on the calendar. Okay, make a plan to have a break, because otherwise an opportunity won't arise, and whatever you do, have it that it recharges you, that it refills your cup, and that it gives you, or for example, you might want to go home and take a nap for 3 hours. Whatever works for you, just take that time. And it may not be a whole weekend of respite. It may be a day where a child has an activity to go to, or, for us, going to the grandparents for the day, where we can just plan something nice as a family. We have our own biological child, and it's good to have an opportunity where you just spend time with them, and do activities that they like to do. So it's really important. We can forget about ourselves so easily, and my advice is to schedule your self-care in the calendar.
And even having like a date night with Mike and stuff like that, things like that, they're important. So, that's good. Training is another avenue of gaining help, especially when a child is presenting with behaviours that are challenging. So seeking out training that might be helpful is a recommendation we strongly suggest. Do you have any recommendations, Fiona?
Yeah, definitely. We were very lucky. Our agency actually provides free TCIF training. That's therapeutic crisis intervention.
Oh, that's good.
It's how to parent and care for a child that comes with trauma. And it's absolutely excellent. It's done over 4 days. And if you ever get the opportunity to do it, please try and do it. And it really helps you to understand why children respond, react, and behave in particular ways. And it gives you the understanding on how to best approach those situations. We frequently look at webinars from Carer Cafe. We've also done webinars with the Foster Care Association. And also, it's really good to do or stay on top of some cultural training if you do have children who are from Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander backgrounds. I enjoy there's the chat with the CEO at the Foster Care Association, which has been great. But I do a little bit of reading on the side, and I like to look at research and what's being done overseas. And I came across this amazing doctor. He's a psychiatrist in the US called Bruce Perry. They call him King Bruce. And he wrote a book called The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog. And he talks about the foundation of a child's brain and development and why they can't do certain things. It's all case studies on different children. So I highly recommend that. And I think too, it's okay to go to your agency and say, I feel like there's a gap. can you suggest anything? And would you be happy to fund it? You know, if you see a course out there that you think would be really helpful, and they can often go to the departments. And so really make sure that you seek that knowledge out actively. Don't sort of sit back and wait for it to come to you, because it can really help the quality of care you provide.
Oh, that's great. I think that's, is there anything else? We can open it. What I can do is stop recording. And Gemma's bought 4 copies of the book and she's given them away to carers. Fantastic, Gemma.
Yeah,
it's amazing. And I've been very fortunate to meet Bruce, and he's the most amazing guy. He's just wonderful. So I'm going to stop recording.